Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems and welcome back to MX Simulator, where today we are going to be reviewing the 2020 Spring Creek National that just happened in real life over the weekend, round 6 of the 2020 Lucas Oil Pro Motocross Championship. So spoiler alert if you haven't already watched it and you're still waiting to see it on Gold or maybe watching the replay on TiVo or whatever it is. I'm going to be obviously kind of spoiling some of the happenings that happened over the weekend, so now would be a good time to maybe click off the video if you don't want it to be spoiled. But for the rest of you, let's jump in to this wild and fun race that completely changed up really everything to do with this 2020 championship so far, I feel like. And I guess I could start off with the biggest change that happened. Let's go right into the Zach Osborne discussion. He had a pretty good first moto. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. He just kind of rode solidly inside of the top 5. Good job of doing some points managing because he had a big enough lead really at the time, I think, to kind of do that and not have to really think too much about, you know, going for race wins or anything along those lines. But the second moto changed everything. Osborne, while once again running inside of the top 5, not looking like he was overexerting himself to go for a race win or anything along those lines, gets a flat front tire with 10 minutes to go in the moto. And man, it was really weird to watch because I felt that the second he pointed down and like went by the mechanics area, that was like him saying, hey, like there's a problem, I'm gonna come in next lap. And then the next lap came and he didn't go into the pits, and the next lap came and he didn't go into the pits. Meanwhile, the Rockstar Husky crew, Dave Feeney's mechanic, and a couple other people were standing down there trying to get everything ready to go so that they could get his front tire changed by, you know, as fast as possible if he did come in. And he didn't come in for a couple laps, so then they started hanging over the fence and saying, like, come in now, like, gotta come in. And it's weird because it looked like he was looking over at the mechanics area but then continuing to go on. And Osborne said after the race that the group of mechanics that he normally looks at had moved, and so he didn't see the board anymore. They normally, I guess, are kind of towards the end of the mechanics row, but they had moved to right at the front because they were getting themselves prepared to bring Osborne in and change that front tire. So he didn't see them. He just kept rolling right on by. But in the end, it actually may have been more beneficial that he didn't come in. He ends up finishing 16th in the moto, loses a big chunk of points in doing so. But if he comes in, and let's just for this sake say that they get a really good clean front tire change done, it takes roughly a minute, but that would be like pushing it. Like, it's not the easiest thing to get a front tire off, swing in a new one, change it, etc. So if they get it done perfectly, they get him back out in about a minute's time. If they had pulled him in right away, he still would have come out in the points. If they had waited until when they tried to like really start yelling at him to come in, which was about 2 laps after the front tire flat happened, he would have come out outside of the points. He would have been in like 23rd or so, having gone in and gotten his front tire changed for a whole minute. Now, obviously the difference there is he comes out with whatever 5 minutes and 2 laps to go and a front tire on his bike, and he can go wide open again and maybe start catching some guys. Like they lapped up to, you know, Osborne was one of the last people to get lapped. I think they lapped up to 14th in the end of it. So maybe if he gets out like alongside or nearby when Cianciarulo and the leaders come by, he can, you know, tail with them and get up to 14th. But even so, you know, you're only gaining like a couple points based off of where he finished, which was 16th in the end. So in the end, it may have been the right move to stay out. And some people will bring it up whether it's a safety hazard to do so. You know, the real safety hazard is more or less to Osborne. He was pretty well staying out of the way of most people. If anything bad would have happened, it would have been the tire coming off of the rim, and then he probably would have fallen over at that point. But he did a pretty good job of managing it, I must say. That was impressive to see how he reacted to that situation. At first, it looked like he was panicked and didn't really know what to do. At the top of Mount Martin here, it seemed like he was always struggling to find grip on the front end to get it going back down the hill. But Osborne already rides on the back of the bike a lot, so it wasn't like it was way out of his element to ride the way that he was riding. So in that sense, it was almost kind of like a blessing that it wasn't a rear tire, I guess, that went flat. I mean, a rear tire going flat, those guys definitely know how to ride through it. Front tire flat, a lot more challenging to deal with because you're trying to get traction in the corners and such. But either way, it throws a huge wrench into this championship suddenly because Osborne, who had entered the day 28 points up on Marvin Muscan, and you know, bigger points gap, I think it was like 36 or so up on Barsha, 42 up on Cianciarulo, 47 up on Tomac. that gap has come way down. Cianciarulo goes 1-1 on the day, his first ever career 1-1 in any class, 250 or 450, and pulls to within 15 of Osborne. And Musquin was in a really, really good position in the second moto to do some serious damage. With Osborne running into the mishaps that he had, it moved Musquin up into third momentarily. So if Musquin was able to finish third in that moto, that's a huge points gain for him. In the end, what happened is Musquin fell at the top of Mount Martin and kind of slid down the hill. He said so after the race that he had just kind of hooked the route wrong and then crashed and then just kind of rolled down the hill, and it took up a lot of time, bent his bars, etc. And in the end, he ends up finishing 10th. So, you look at that situation right there, 10th place, you get awarded 11 points for finishing in 10th. But, he would have gotten 20 points for finishing in third in that moto. So now he is 20 points behind Osborne, but he could have been as little as 11 points behind him had he not fallen and gained those 9 points back that he essentially lost by falling. So Osborne got a little bit of a break there, but the dynamic has definitely shifted in this series because Cianciarulo, rookie in the class, suddenly full of momentum, getting good starts and running up front very frequently, and now we're going to his home state of Florida, and there's a lot of things starting to stack in Cianciarulo's favor a little bit. That being said, I don't think Osborne is in a position where this championship is about to slip away from him, but it is a little bit more interesting to talk about than it was for sure. Osborne was almost in a position where had he had just a good round here, Cianciarulo would have still taken over second in the points, but the gap would have been significantly bigger. It would have been, up to somewhere in the 30s or so. If Osborne just brings home a third or a fourth or whatever it was that he was in that moto. And championship blown open suddenly. So I guess that's going to be my comment question of the day for you guys. Is Adam Cianciarulo on a good enough roll at this point? Got the momentum going in his favor. Osborne having some struggles. Can Cianciarulo close this thing down and actually win this championship? I would say no. I think Osborne, the veteran that he is, I think he comes out at WW Ranch. Even if he doesn't win, he rides much, more, I guess, on edge or aggressive or whatever than he has been. I feel like he's definitely not so much at the Redbuds, but this round it really did look to me like he was more or less like, I don't need to break my back here to go with these guys. Like, I'll run their pace, but I'm not going to try to pass them bonsai down a hill or anything like that, which, a guy like Blake Baggett absolutely was doing. So because of that, I think it puts Osborne in a situation where he does have to start riding a little bit more to the manner of that we saw at the beginning of the year for him, where he has to try to go for race wins or go for, seconds at the least and try to manage the points a little bit more finitely than he has, because it was more or less, going his way up until this point. So yeah, is this a situation where Cianciarulo can close it down and win the championship, or does Osborne have it in him to come back at WW Ranch and get it back in his favor? That is going to be my question of the day. But anyway, beyond all that, like championship scenarios closing up and stuff like that, how about Blake freaking Baggett, who turned things around huge with that win in the second moto at Redbud? And then in the post-race press conference, he said that the only thing that they've really done different is changed something in their clutch assembly, and it made him feel a lot more comfortable, and that's what's kind of pushed him into this zone that he's had. And he even spoke in the interviews after the race as well to how this, the win at Redbud kind of reignited him and like reminded him like, hey, I can go that fast. I do have that speed in me. I can win these races, especially when he starts up front, which he's been doing more or less lately as well. And it's good to see, because I wasn't like super down on Baggett, because he's just kind of is what he is, but it was just like disheartening to see that. Like, there were a couple times in Supercross that you're like, oh man, Baggett, like, he is on a roll. He could challenge for race wins again. Finally, we're seeing this guy really start to shine through again, like we had seen in 2019. And then it started falling apart at the end. Like, he just was not that good at the Salt Lake City stretch, for example, and a couple other things were not going his way. And then at the beginning of the season, he kind of more or less just looked like a top 5 guy in the outdoors, which, outdoors I feel is more his forte. He's a little bit better at it. And given the guys that were missing from the series, no Roxon, Anderson getting hurt, Cooper Webb out, things like that. I just more or less expected Baggett to be a little closer to the front than he was, but that win at Redbud 2, just like he said, reignited the flame that he still can do it. And challenge for the titles. It was interesting to hear him talk about as well that he wants to be in it for the title down to the end. He's 42 back now at this point, and even if we look at Cian Cerullo, he's still like 27 back or so of him. Pretty big gap to Cian Cerullo, who has now beaten him these last couple rounds in points. I tend to disagree that he's going to try to keep this title fight alive, but what's really cool to see is that if this Osborne and Cian Cerullo and perhaps even Musquin can figure out a way to start winning motos again, is this comes down to the stretch, Blake Baggett is suddenly a spoiler in this whole thing, which is really cool because it's not cut and dry that Osborne or Cian Cerullo or Musquin or Tomac or Barcia or whoever is going to go out and win these motos. Like, Baggett is getting in there, ruffling feathers. Guys like Chase Sexton also riding very well. Sexton was third in the second moto at Millville. Like, this is really cool that this championship fight is not two guys slugging it out at the top down the stretch. It is much more open than that, and I think that in itself opens up the opportunity for Cian Cerullo a little bit more, because like this weekend, for example, if it happens again where Cian Cerullo goes 1-1 and Osborne can only get like a fourth in both motos or something, like there's your points lead gone. Like, that is a 7-point swing in both motos. It's now down to a 1-point lead for Osborne after WW Ranch if the 1-1-4-4 scenario happens. Like, that is kind of crazy to think about how much the tables have turned here for the 450 championship. And what's really turned upside down on its head at this point is Eli Tomac's chances at winning his fourth consecutive Lucas Oil Pro Motocross Championship. And I know, I get it. Believe me, Tomac fans, I 100% understand. He's got a huge weight off his shoulders. He is kind of riding this one in probably a little bit, having won the Supercross title, just had a kid. Mindset might be in a little different situation than he has been for the outdoors the last couple of years. But it's just crazy to me how different this Eli Tomac is than the Eli Tomac we have seen outdoors for the last 3 years, because it seems like Tomac, even when he was having a bad day or having something that wasn't just comfortable or right or whatever, once he got into the race mode, the second half of the races, and really started pouring it on, that's when we started seeing the beast mode rides come out, and he really could wick it up and go that extra level that nobody else could do. And we have not seen that once this year, in my opinion. I think that maybe at Ironman we saw a little glimpse of it, but to me that even wasn't like beast mode, because I don't think Tomac at the top of his game is similar to Barcia at the top of his game, and that was what was going on. Barcia was riding insane and keeping Tomac honest, and Tomac just couldn't shake him. Like, he still won the moto, and that's great, but it's crazy that this is such a different Tomac that we're seeing this year. And Jason Thomas in our Racer X article breakdown earlier today basically highlighted all the things I've said, where he's, I think in his opinion, is just kind of mailing this one in. Like, it doesn't matter that much to him because he's got the big prize at this point. The Supercross title is so elusive. It was just plaguing him forever. And now that he's got that, he doesn't have to be like, well, I need to, pad my stats in outdoors so that it, the records show a different story, that I was epic and, I won 4 outdoor titles. I mean, the dude has won 3 straight outdoor titles. There's been like a handful of people that have ever even done that. And now he has a Supercross title to his resume. I don't know. I just think that Tomac, his mind's not there, and if his mind's not there, that this is the product you get. Like, he is just another guy on the track. It's kind of a bummer to see, because I feel like this was a huge opportunity for him. Like, could you imagine if Tomac had, maybe a third in the first moto, then the second moto, beast moded his way to the front. Maybe he doesn't pass AC and Baggett, but again, like another third or something like that. Huge points gained on Osborne in the championship, and suddenly he's only, 20, he'd be 30, because he's 39 or 38 back now, so, you gain a couple more points in each moto alone, because he ended up going 6-5. Yeah, you're looking at just like 30, 28 points-ish back of Osborne, and suddenly it's that much more like of a possibility for you to get into this championship picture down the stretch. Like, if more weird things happen, you start winning more motos, things like that. But I think it's over for Tomac. Like, it's just, at this point, it's over. 39 points down to Osborne, but even so, he doesn't have any momentum. He's not winning races. He's not getting good starts and challenging at the front. So even someone like Baggett, who's behind him in the points, I think you look at Baggett as a guy that can maybe do more damage down the stretch than Tomac, which is just such a weird proposition to think about. But that's where we are, folks, 2020. And I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it at all from the people that say, oh, it's a shortened series, 9 races. Like, after being down early, of course he thought he was out of it. It's so short. Like, it was just a stupid series anyway. Like, they know how many races there are in this championship coming into it. They know what is on the line. They know what needs to happen. And Tomac even won a race after he was well down in the points after 2 rounds. So, don't give me that crap, because I think that early on in this championship, even after the second round happened, he still wanted to win this championship badly. Like, I think Ironman showed that he was trying to will his way into a position to win it. And it's just not happening this year. Now I think his mindset has shifted, but I just don't. It's not fair to whoever wins this title, Osborne, Cianciarulo, Musquin, whoever it is, to discredit the fact that they're doing something incredible by kind of toppling this Eli Tomac dominance run, and one of them is going to be their first ever 450 championship. It's either going to be Osborne's, or it's going to be Cianciarulo's or Musquin's, or who knows, maybe even Barsha comes from behind and seals this thing late. Like, it's still close enough that anything is possible, especially if stuff like that happens to Osborne, which is weird because now this is the second time that there's been some sort of mechanical weird thing that's happened with the Rockstar Energy Husqvarna team. It's not entirely their fault. Things happen, front wheels go flat. I get it. I'm not saying that Dave Feeney is a terrible mechanic or anything like that, but it's happened twice already. They say third time's the charm. I mean, it's not out of the question that there's another mechanical issue potentially looming on the horizon that, hurts Osborne even more. I don't know. Like, it's just not out of the question at this point, in my opinion, to say that that's a possibility. So anyway, 450 championship blown wide open. Very interesting, and excited to see what happens at WW Ranch this coming weekend. It's going to be absolutely mental. But let's move into the 250 class, which on the flip side is a very 2-horse race. It is very Jeremy Martin and Dylan Ferrandis heavy at this point. And Spring Creek kind of hit that one home even further to me, because even though in the first moto there was some other guys mixed in with Alex Martin, Jet Lawrence, and trying to think who finished second in the first moto. I can't think of it. It'll come to me. The Yamaha rider, isn't it? I don't know why it's just going completely blank on me. Hampshire, second in the first moto, that's right. But those guys finishing ahead of J Mart while Ferrandis goes on to win. That's obviously a huge swing in the points right there. First place for Ferrandis, 5th place for Martin. They entered the second moto tied on points, and wouldn't you know it, Ferrandis and J Mart end up dueling each other nearly to the death, it seemed, in the second moto. That was one of the better motos we've seen in a long time. Now, could have done with a little bit more passing. I think the track didn't really lend itself to pass very well. They've had this newer trend this year, which I've personally liked, where they aren't ripping the tracks as deep and watering the heck out of them. They don't need to do the watering anymore that much because it's not as hot, so they don't need to keep the moisture in the track all day long and make it deep so that the water sits on the bottom of the track and stuff like that. But I like that they do what they've been doing, which is leaving the tracks relatively flat and smooth and not deep and stuff like that, because it brings out the characteristic of each track. Millville to me is a little bit treacherous when they do that, because there's like that sandy, just so light, fluffy base top layer that happens, and then the underneath part of it is much more hard pack, and you end up getting these gnarly kickers mixed in with the sand that lays on top of it, and creates kind of like a weird situation on some straightaways. But the track itself, I think, is great otherwise, and I like the characteristic it brought out this weekend, because it just seemed like these guys could charge so hard everywhere, just laying it into corners really, and just throttling out and really pushing the envelope, which created for an intense second moto, no question about it. But I think both those guys, Ferrandis takes the points lead back. He goes 1-1. He comes off of a couple weeks that have been rough. Of course he's going to be happy. Like, why wouldn't you be? But I don't think Jeremy Martin is going to leave this round with his head hanging low, because, like, realistically speaking, I think he was the better rider in the second moto. I think that he gave Ferrandis everything he could handle and said, like, hey, dude, like, this is not going to be your championship for the taking. I am going to be here to fight you to the end, which I really enjoy seeing, because I was, like, kind of nervous to see Ferrandis ahead of Martin in the second moto. And I was kind of thinking to myself, like, this is the opportunity for Ferrandis to really just kind of like lay claim to the series again, like just demoralize Martin by getting the lead and pulling away from him. But Martin, man, he hung in there, and it is his home track, but records show in the history that this is not exactly a Jeremy Martin track. He has won here before, but that was, you know, during some of his championship year runs and such. Honestly, he's not that great here, usually speaking, compared to some other tracks. Like, Martin was usually pretty good at like Muddy Creek. He's been pretty good at places like Unadilla, other things like that. Millville, even though it's his backyard, literally, is not a track that Jeremy Martin goes out and won ones all the time. So I think you can definitely hang your hat on it for Martin here, that it's like, man, he actually does have this speed to match Ferrandis. He has that like kind of drive inside of him to go that extra little oomph when it's getting late in the motos and they're getting tired and the track's getting beat up and stuff like that. Martin not laying over at all, and I like to see it. That is really, really cool to see, and is going to make a great championship fight down the stretch. So 3-point lead now for Ferrandis in the championship coming into the final 3 rounds. The interesting part about it is that Ferrandis, who was ridiculously good in the second half of last year, is now coming to a bunch of tracks that he wasn't exactly that good at in the first half. Like WW Ranch, he won a moto. He's good there, but you know, Thunder Valley and Paula were not exactly good races for Ferrandis. He was coming off the Supercross hangover a little bit in 2019, but still, they're not necessarily his strong suits, I think. I think that WW Ranch is going to be a pivotal point for him, because if he can go 1-1 there, it kind of sets the tone for the series a little bit down the stretch. But I still think that, you know, J Marty's good at Thunder Valley. He seems like he's pretty good at California tracks as well, even though he, I don't think he's ever raced Paula, I don't believe, because they were out of there before he turned pro, and then he was out last year when Paula returned to the schedule, so he's never raced Paula. But I feel like Martin's the type of rider that would do pretty good on a track like that. Anyway, interesting to see, maybe hear what your guys' thoughts in the comment section below. I know I already asked the comment question of the day, but, you know, J. Martin Ferrandis, 3 points in it between them. Who you got? 3 rounds to go. One's a 2-time champion. One is a 2-time Supercross champion. And they're both trying to pick up their 3rd American title here, but who's going to take it? This is going to be an interesting one to watch. Behind them, I'm kind of surprised to see like how things have fluctuated so much. RJ Hampshire got landed on by Jeremy Martin in practice, just a weird incidental contact thing from the step up over here on the left side of me, heading into the back corner behind me now. And Hampshire apparently injured his hip in that little altercation there, so because of that, it sounds like he's kind of trying to recover a little bit from a new injury that wasn't there before. Obviously, he's coming off of ACL surgery, and it seems like that has been totally fine, but if he's got a hip injury now, I don't think he's going to be 100% moving down the stretch, especially coming to a track like WW Ranch that's kind of sandy, high speed, and stuff like that. Even though he's done well there before, I don't know if that's going to be a track that is going to suit this little hip injury that he has all too well, which is kind of a bummer, because Hampshire was definitely on a good roll there for a little while, but now he's got to try to recoup in the week, and probably won't ride this much this week as he tries to get a handle on what's up with his hip and whether or not he can kind of get back on top of it. But yeah, bit of a bummer there. Alex Martin, home track again with the Martin brothers and Martin family owning the facility. Cool to see the Martin brothers on the podium. Alex goes 4-4 on the day. I was a little disappointed in him just because he had first gate pick both motos, started up front both motos, and then kind of faded back to 4th, if you will. Like, I get that he finished 4th and he actually kind of picked it up late in both motos to get that spot, but initially it seemed like he started right at the front of the first moto and faded through everybody and then clawed his way back to 4th. I don't really like that sign right there. I think to me that more or less shows that Martin doesn't have the same intensity early in the motos. He maybe has the fitness down the stretch, but when those guys are going for their kind of full send early on, he just needs to mentally click into that next gear, I think, to get the ball rolling a little bit faster than he has been. It's not a horrible thing. It's more of like a mental click, I think, that he has to have happen, but definitely something that needs to be fixed, because it was not too good in that first moto. It was very quickly seeming like, where is Amart going? Like, he starts in second and goes backwards. That was kind of weird. Anyway, I digress. I'm starting to feel bad for Jet Lawrence. As good as he has been riding this year, the dude has missed out on the podium by fractions for three straight rounds at this point. Missed out by 2 points, I think it was, at Redbud, and missed out by 1 point here at Spring Creek on getting his first career overall podium. He's obviously finished third in a moto already. He's done that twice now, but I think, the carrot dangling in front of him is he wants to get on the box and kind of challenge these guys. But as I was talking to my boss, Jason Wygant, about this earlier today, it's not really that bad for him at this stage, because if you look at all the guys around him, like, he is so young compared to everybody else. Like, even some of the debutantes he's alongside that are making their 250 class debut this season, dude, Jet is 17 years old and looks like he is growing into a very mature young racer. He still makes some mistakes. He still rides a little bit over his head, but every 17-year-old does that. And now, at least for his sake, he's not hitting the ground as often, which is a good sign. My coworker Mitch Kendra wrote a really good article that was up on racerxonline.com on Friday about how Jet Lawrence has kind of grown into this rider that is more of a steady, rock-solid guy than you expected him to be. Like, you can count on him finishing inside of the top 10, because other than the two blown-up Hondas at Loretta Lynn's 2, he did finish in the top 10 in every single moto so far this year. So it's kind of cool to see, because I think that this sets him up really well moving into next season. If he can stay healthy, if he can round out this championship, maybe sneak onto the box a couple times, like, does himself really good mentally, but been riding dang well. Like, really kind of under the radar how good he's been, just because we're so focused on this Martin Ferrandis battle out front that you don't notice that in his first full rookie season, Jet Lawrence is pretty impressive, if I do say so myself. Steve Mathis doesn't want to believe the hype at all. He's wanting people to back down from the Jet Lawrence train a little bit, but proof is in the pudding, man. The kid in his first full season is just flat out shining everybody else. Even some very elder statesman riders that are on his team. I hate to say that he's doing better than his brother Hunter. It's the reality, of course, but Hunter did have a dislocated shoulder at Loretta Lynn's 2, or was it 1 maybe? And that's really set him back, and he had a much better week this time around, ending up inside of the top 10 well and truly both motos. And he's trying to work himself back into a fitness level that's comfortable to, run that front pace a little bit more often, because he's a guy that can challenge for moto wins when he's feeling 100% and gets good starts. So hopefully that is the case for him as well. But the Lawrence brothers, I think, turning some heads again this summer and setting themselves up very well for Supercross ahead of us. Anyway, now we're heading into WW Ranch. Round 7 coming up this weekend in Florida. A lot of other rumor news that I want to hit on and stuff, but I'm actually going to make some separate videos this week to talk about some of the other big rumors that have come out of the paddock in the last couple days, because there's a lot of stuff going on that I don't know if all you guys are up to date on. So we'll hit on those a little bit later in the week with some more stuff. I'll have a GP review coming for the Emilia Romagna GP that I haven't quite got to covering just yet. But we'll hit on some markers there and some more stuff coming later in the week. But as always, appreciate you guys stopping by, watching another video here on Start Your Systems. Hope you guys enjoyed it, as always, and we'll see you guys in the next one. So long for now.